Filmmaking can be its own special kind of hell. In independent films, it's often a process of blood, sweat, tears, and in some cases, life and death. This was discovered firsthand by brothers and aspiring filmmakers Howard and John Ford. It all started in 1977. When they were kids, the Ford brothers lived near a golf course. John used to climb a tree and imagine he had to stay up there because there were zombies below. Over the years, the brothers saw many zombie movies, but loved George Romero's zombie films the best. They were slower paced and focused on the survival of the characters and not just the zombies. They started writing their ideas in the 1980s, but eventually, reality took over, and their dreams of filmmaking were put aside while they took jobs in advertising. Years had gone by, and while they had very well-paying jobs filming commercials, they weren't happy. They tried their hand at filmmaking in 1994 with Mainline Run, and again in 2000's Distant Shadow, without much success. In the late 2000s, they decided to work on the idea they had been cultivating since they were kids, the dead. They wanted to be a throwback to the old zombie films they grew up with. They worked on a proper script and were able to secure financing, along with them investing their life savings into the production. There had been plenty of zombie movies taking place in largely populated areas, and they wanted to do something different by having this one take place in the Sahara Desert. This would also allow them to take advantage of some of the beautiful locations this would provide. Unfortunately, choosing to film in Africa would prove to be a nightmare beyond anything they could have ever imagined. The story revolved around Lieutenant Brian Murphy, who is trying to find a way out of Africa. He meets Sergeant Daniel, who's searching for his son, and the two agree to help each other survive. The story was fairly simple, which is exactly what the brothers wanted. They didn't feel the need to bog down the tale with unnecessary twists and turns. Two people trying to survive the elements, as well as the zombie apocalypse, was more than enough. They wanted an old-school adventure with horror elements, not an action movie. The two main leads were Rob Freeman, an actor who's been in both movies and television, and Prince David Osia, a local actor who was perfect for the role. They planned on using locals as extras, in roles as the villagers and zombies. With everything in place, they loaded up the crew and headed to Burkina Faso, where they planned to film for 6 weeks. Once they landed, the cursed production began. The brothers planned to start filming right away, but were caught off guard by something unexpected. Their equipment was held in customs. While this was getting resolved, the cast and crew waited. During this time, the brothers were driving around the area and saw many disabled people begging on the streets. They offered them roles in the film as zombies missing limbs. After 3 weeks, they finally were able to get their equipment out of customs and began filming. The first day of filming, the directors were mugged. Not by thugs, but by the corrupt police in the area. This became an ongoing thing throughout the shoot. They were frequently extorted by the local police and had to keep paying them in order to continue working. For a production that was already low budget, this hurt. Some scenes they planned had to be scrapped because they no longer had the money for it. The people in the villages were another story. They were happy to help and made more money working on the movie than they would have doing hard labor. They were filming in villages in various locations in Burkina Faso. The sets were occasionally visited by bandits who saw them carrying guns and decided not to rob them. The guns Rob and Prince were carrying were fake, but the rest of them were real. The Ford brothers both had cameos. Howard was the soldier who gets killed on the beach, and John runs away only to be seen later as a zombie. For the scene where they find numerous people dead, the corpses were locals paid to lie still. They were more than happy to do this, and some of them had to be woken up because the mics were picking up them snoring. They limited the use of machetes in the film because they knew it would bring back thoughts of the Rwanda genocide. The plane in the beginning was used in one of the Bond movies. In order to keep the old school look, they wanted to keep the effects practical. Unfortunately, under the intense heat, many of the prosthetics melted. In the outdoor scenes, they usually only had 1 or 2 takes before the prosthetics were destroyed. They were shooting on film, which was difficult because they could only bring so many cans per day. They tried to do as many scenes as they could with the least amount of takes because once the film was gone, they were done for the day. After shooting each day, they sent the film off to be processed. There weren't any labs, so there wasn't anywhere for them to view the dailies. A few weeks into the shoot, they got word that one of the reels from earlier had been ruined, so they had to go back and reshoot the missing scenes. The production ran into even more problems. As days went by, many members of the crew got dysentery. John Ford lost so much weight in such a short period of time, he was too weak to hold his Steadicam. The movie had parts reminiscent of a road movie, which they shot in this old pickup they bought from a local villager. Almost every morning, the truck wouldn't work and they had to repair it. Someone wanted the truck, so every night they'd sabotage it so it wouldn't run. It got to a point where it was so messed up, they just pushed it along while they were filming. Since they were shooting in areas that didn't have electricity, they brought a generator with them every day. The generator was very noisy, so they had a soundproof case on it to cut down the noise. They're not sure why exactly, but one morning they found someone smash the case, completely destroying it. The generator underneath was slightly battered, but it was still functional. They had to use it for the rest of the filming as far away as possible because now the generator sound was drowning out the audio. They had permission from an official to film at a small airport. Unfortunately, shortly before they were supposed to film there, he was killed in a car accident. So when they arrived to shoot, they were turned away. They were talking to the people who were there and filmed what they could, which was only a few minutes before they were thrown out. The trucks were real military vehicles from Sierra Leone. They had a scene where they were shooting some zombies when they were surrounded by another military force.
And now we've realised that over there is none other than the president's house. So they've raised a few eyebrows.
Filming with real military equipment that close to the president's house, they're lucky they weren't shot. One of the crew fell off a truck and almost completely ripped his finger off. Then came the worst. Rob Freeman, the lead in the film, came down with malaria. They took him to the hospital, where he stayed for 2 weeks. During that time, they had to film what they could without him. They shot any scenes they had left with just Prince or Prince and other characters. Anytime it's supposed to be Rob, but you only see his legs, it's Howard Ford acting in his place. After 2 weeks, Rob came back to finish filming, but wasn't completely lucid. The scene where he was climbing the rocks, he climbed 50 feet with no harness while still recovering from malaria. The directors didn't want him to do it, but he started doing it on his own, so they decided they might as well film it. Finally, they were shooting the last scene, which was the opening of the film. They shot this on the edge of the Sahara Desert. For the zombie, the bone is prosthetic, but his leg was messed up for real. His knee almost bent backwards. Filming was supposed to last 6 weeks. It ran 12. They had more they wanted to film, but they reached their limit. Everyone in the cast and crew was sick with either food poisoning, dysentery, or malaria. At this point, they just wanted to go home. While they didn't get everything they wanted shot, they were able to get enough of the story they wanted to tell. After filming, Howard Ford was having nightmares about the production. To help cope, he wrote a book about the experience called Surviving the Dead. The movie was released in October 2011, which was still early on in the zombie craze. It was praised for its beautiful scenery and for being more in line with the old-school zombie films. The Dead is a tremendous feat in filmmaking. While the movie may not be exactly what the director duo had hoped, the fact that they were able to get anything at all is amazing, let alone it being a very good zombie movie. While it may be too slow for some, I appreciated the return of the old-school atmospheric, dread-filled zombie films. Even though some scenes were shot in 1 or 2 takes, it never felt rushed. The movie also did a few things differently. For example, they wanted to subvert the audience's expectations by having the handsome, obvious hero character die, and have Rob, a background soldier, become the focus of the story. Unfortunately, because of all the problems, they weren't quite able to do the scene as intended. For a low-budget film, many of the effects were impressive. Beheadings, shootings, and even a zombie head crush. I also like that they never explained the cause of the zombie outbreak. It just happened and the people were trying to survive. This was pure, unintended guerrilla filmmaking. They were in a foreign land trying to film their passion project while dealing with bandits, corruption, theft, disease, and the looming threat of death. With all the problems they had, they kept going while many others would have quit. Even Rob Freeman said he was going to finish the movie if it killed him, which it almost did. The end result was a solid old-school zombie film that garnered a lot of attention. So much so, the distributor wanted them to make a sequel. After the hell they went through, the brothers swore they would never film there again, which is why The Dead 2 takes place in India.
An American mercenary.
I'm just trying to survive.